Yeah, I think it would get too tricky if we make all these specific rules. It's just who we would put up against anybody in the pool of anyone that's ever come through and played professional basketball, whether it's the ABA, the NBA, anything along those lines. It's just if you had to pick a starting five, and I went position by position, I think you were a little more creative, with a couple guys who do play the same position, but I kind of went chalk one, two, three, four, and five, put them together. I feel they could beat anybody. But this is hard, and it makes for a healthy debate because there are so many great players that have played, are currently playing now, and have yet to come. But on this day, August the 6th of 2019, the way our all-time starting fives are set up, that's how I think we should structure it.
Okay, so since this was my idea, I'm gonna start and I'll give my rationale. So my all-time starting five, and I had a really tough call on one of these that I went back and forth a lot on. But my ultimate starting five is Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, Klay Thompson, LeBron James, and Hakeem Olajuwon. So I had a pretty straightforward approach to how I did this. I tried to get guys who could really shoot, um, and guys who could defend for the most part. At the point guard position, I wasn't sure if I could get a guy who could really do both of those things, so I ended up going with Curry, who's one of the all-time shooters. To me, this team is tailor-made to have an MJ, LeBron pick and roll, surrounded by Hakeem down low, or have MJ or LeBron run pick and roll with Hakeem. Curry and Thompson are on the outside. They can be secondary ball handlers. Thompson's unselfish, is a great defender. Um, I very, very nearly swapped out LeBron to put in Kawhi Leonard because I felt like Kawhi was a slightly better fit on this team. That would leave MJ to do a lot more of the ball handling and give Curry a little bit more ball handling. And I think Kawhi overall at his peak is a better defender than LeBron was. So I have to say I'm still torn, and I'm still not sure which of those two I'd put in. The advantage of Kawhi is I think he's a better fit on this team. We saw him play with the Spurs, that he doesn't need the ball as much. He's a better shooter than LeBron, better defender than LeBron, and potentially a better rebounder than LeBron, which are really important traits on this team that I put together, whereas we are a little weak on rebounding. So I think when push comes to shove, I might end up swapping out LeBron for Kawhi, but basically, the point of this team is you're surrounding MJ with shooters, great defenders, and a guy down low in Hakeem who can protect the basket. I feel like against this team, not teams would really struggle to score. They could try to pick on Curry, but I mean, unless they really obliterate that matchup, I think they would really have a tough time. And then meanwhile, trying to defend MJ, not many guys have ever been able to do it. And having the shooters around him meant that he'd be able to play a lot of one-on-one or run pick and roll with Hakeem, which is an absolute nightmare to try and defend.
I thought you went really outside the box with your team, and I like what you did. Putting Klay Thompson in there, I mean, there's no doubt he's one of the best shooters in NBA history, but then, you have other shooting guards like Ray Allen, who was in there who could potentially make this list. But you went more modern, with two guys that are still in their prime. LeBron, who's on the back end of his prime. MJ, obviously. I think it would be great if him and LeBron were in the NBA together in their primes because that would have been, legendary. And then you have a good rim protector in there in Hakeem. So I thought you had interesting selections. You really went outside the box. My five, I went a little more traditional. I went Magic Johnson at the one, Kobe Bryant at the two, LeBron at the three, Kevin Garnett at the four, Wilt Chamberlain at the five. So I think your lineup is more modern, where mine's a little bit more old school because the only elite shooter in my lineup is Kobe. But when you have the passing of Magic, he could rebound, he could score. LeBron James is a do it all guy. KG in his prime could, anywhere from inside the arc, he's money. And then you have an all time center in Wilt. I thought about Shaq, but I thought Wilt was a little more athletic in his prime than Shaquille O'Neal was. He was a little bit lankier.
Hmm.
So I thought he'd be a solid five. We passed up on some epic point guards, though. No John Stockton, no Steve Nash, no Jason Kidd, no Chris Paul. You went real new school with Steph Curry, and I went real old school with a guy like Magic Johnson. So, I mean, what do you think of my five?
I like it a lot. I mean, if you're playing old school basketball, those guys, I mean, the amount of size you're putting on the court is pretty impressive. You got a 6'8" point guard, 6'9" small forward, 7 footers at your power forward and your center position, and you got Kobe, who's always been a good defender. So I think teams would really struggle to score. One of the things that this exercise kind of made me think about is imagining guys like Wilt, or guys like Shaq. But Wilt really comes to mind because during Wilt's prime, he would get triple and even quadruple teamed, and it's amazing to think that that was legal. Now, mind you, the key was much smaller back then. They actually made it larger because of him. But it's amazing to kind of think of Wilt or Shaq in a league where it was completely impossible to double team them. And if the foul rules continue where you can't foul guys as much, kind of amazing to think about that too. Of imagining those guys in a league where they just played one on one the whole time would be pretty interesting, I think. So that's something that would be kind of fun here. The projection of a guy like Wilt or even Shaq, who played not that long ago, but just in a league where it's much harder to double team. Now, obviously, way back in the day, they had some of the illegal defenses and so on, but obviously they found ways around that as well. So I think this is a lot of fun. I think there's a really great question to be asked of how you'd want to put together a team. For me, I think I like you said, I went more modern, sort of a spread pick and roll team that would have a guy like an MJ. And that's one of the reasons why I really thought about Kawhi over LeBron, where LeBron is clearly a better player than Kawhi all time. But Kawhi is such a great like second banana on a team. I mean, we saw it with the Spurs. He's probably the second best player on a team of all time. And likewise, I think you could make the case that Klay Thompson is the third best player on a team of all time. I think you could make that case that he's in that stratosphere. There's a few guys in there like the Dennis Rodmans, Robert Parrish, some of the guys on the Celtics way back in the day, but maybe trying to think for those Lakers teams, you had Kareem, you had Magic, and you had oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name right now, Jason. But you know
James Worthy.
James Worthy. I mean Worthy, maybe Parrish. Those guys are in that same conversation. But I mean that's kind of the way I constructed this team. And then obviously, as you said, a rim protector and Akeem. What was kind of your strategy when you put this team together?
I just kind of went through each position and I picked a guy that stood out head and shoulders above the rest. Magic, one of the greatest point guards of all time. And I wanted to mix old school and new school because we're not doing like an all decade team like NBA.com just released, which was pretty interesting. We're doing an all time starting five. And you ask 1,000 different people this question, and you have the potential to get 1,000 different combinations, 1,000 different lineups filled with players because everyone is entitled to their own opinion, in an exercise like this. So, I went with Magic because I thought he can distribute. You put Kobe and LeBron on the wings. They're fan favorites. They're two of the most uh, polarizing athletes of pretty much this generation or all time. Kevin Garnett's that old school toughness who can shoot, like I said, from anywhere on the floor, mid range. And then Wilt, only guy in NBA history with a 100-point game. You put him in there. The other four guys don't really need to do much. And it'd be fun to see Wilt and Hakeem kind of going up against each other. And then the only thing that I don't like about this exercise, Ben, is that our teams can't play against each other because we don't know which team LeBron would suit up for. We'd have to ask him.
I could take Kawhi. I'll throw Kawhi in there just to make it extra fun. So we would have. I mean, I have to ask you before I go into the matchup. How did you choose Kobe over MJ? That is the only one there that I was a little surprised by.
I guess it's because, Kobe is a better shooter, and I put so many more, drivers or pick and pop guys that I needed a guy that could kill you from deep. And MJ and LeBron are so similar to me in terms of when they were in their prime, their gameplay. I think LeBron was a little more athletic. MJ was the better shooter, but I couldn't do it. I had to put, one of MJ or LeBron. I could not put them both for intents purposes because you think about it, MJ and LeBron on the same team would never lose. They would go 98-0, 82 regular season games, and then 16-0 in the playoffs. So I had to do that to make it a little more fun.
Okay, fair enough. I'll take it. So let's look at the matchups. Let's say I put in, instead of LeBron, I give you LeBron, I get to put in Kawhi. So we have, at the point guards, it would be Magic Johnson versus Steph Curry. At shooting guard, we'd have Kobe versus MJ, which is pretty fun. At the 3, we have LeBron against Klay Thompson. At the 4, we would have Kevin Garnett against Kawhi Leonard. And at the 5, would have Hakeem versus Wilt. Jason, I gotta say, I think my team's gonna take this one.
I don't know. I mean, because if you have LeBron and Garnett at the 3 and 4 with Kawhi and Clay, I think those are mismatches in the weighting because I had a bigger lineup. And I think that Curry would have a tremendous difficulty staying with Magic because I think he's the only defensive liability in your lineup. I think that your team would have better shooting, but just the overall grit and toughness, I think my team definitely comes out on top. Kobe and LeBron, I mean, they are two of the most cerebral assassins of all time. You really only have one. I would say we could put Kawhi in that category after he retires. But when you think of the three guys that are probably the best individual players of all time, Kobe, LeBron, and MJ, I mean, Kawhi could eventually be there, but I have two of those and you have one. So, ha ha.
I think the one thing that would be really funny with your team is how quickly everyone on the team turns on Wilt when he doesn't want to practice or do other things.
That's what
And
Kevin Garnett's there for, man.
that's
He's
what
going to
I'm
make him go
saying.
to practice.
You've got Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant yelling at Wilt like literally every practice would be fun to watch. But at any rate, these were fun. I enjoyed putting these together. We have a couple other things to go through today. We'll go through pretty quick. So we have our free agents. Obviously, Vince Carter looks like he's headed to the Hawks, Jason.
Yeah, he is. And I think that was a good move for Atlanta. I thought their roster had been full. But we were talking last week about a couple of OGs and Carter and Jamal Crawford, and VC found a home. I think this is finally it for him. So it's interesting to me that he couldn't, latch on with a contender. I guess at this point he doesn't think he's capable of winning a ring. He just kind of wants to go out there for one last hurrah and just play the game he loves. But he's back in Atlanta. Great veteran presence for a team that has so many young players: Trey Young, John Collins, Cam Reddish. They have youth everywhere, and I think it's a perfect spot for VC to kind of have his NBA song.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is definitely a good opportunity for him to have the swan song. And yeah, I mean, good luck to him. Great player, one of the most beloved guys around the league. Um, and I think with that, we're gonna go to our newest segment, Jason, which is our best bets
How
of the
how
offseason.
you gonna do Udonis Haslam like that? I think you were staring at the show notes. You didn't know who UD was. Am I wrong?
I had no idea who UD was. I really did not.
All right. So before we move on to best bets, Udonis Haslam, it just came out a couple of hours ago that he's returning to the Heat for his 17th season.
Oh
He
my.
might be like the worst player in NBA history to ever get his number retired by a team. He's been there 17 years. He's now the sixth player of all time to spend 17 or more seasons with one team. It's a very short list. He has 3 rings and another old guy. I mean, this is how crazy free agency was this time a month ago that the only two signings of note to talk about at tonight's show are two guys that are pretty much on their way out of the league. So Vince Carter and Udonis Haslam. UD 17 seasons in Miami. Hats off to him. He got to stay in South Florida pretty much his entire life, and now he's going to have a very nice retirement. So congrats, UD.
My goodness. I'm actually a little bit shocked that he's getting paid $2.6 million. I
What's the
mean,
veteran's minimum for a player with his service time?
I
They can't pay him less than that. It's in the
I
CBA.
yeah, I guess. I mean, like I don't last year he played a grand total of looks like 74 minutes on the season. I'm gonna guess less. I would go on the under on that, Jason.
If
Uh
someone offered you $2 million to play 74 minutes in the NBA, would you do it?
oh, I would 100% do it in that case. I mean for the Heat. I mean over the last 3 seasons, Jason, he has played a grand total of 40 games in 3 seasons. I'm a little confused as to what the Heat are doing. I
You
don't.
know damn well Pat Riley only brought him back to keep Jimmy Butler from going AWOL. Because if Jimmy Butler tries to do something stupid in the locker room, Udonis Haslam's going to be there waiting to bash his head in.
I
It's
guess
a locker
so.
room move.
I mean,
Spoelstra needs that captain in his back pocket to keep, Jimmy Butler from going crazy because there are some personalities on that team. Deion Waiters is still there, Kelly Olynyk's still there, so it's an interesting cast of characters. And Haslam's kind of reining them in as the elder statesman.
yeah, I guess he'll be their 15th man slash kind of player coach. Just interesting. In the last 4 seasons, Jason, he's averaged about 7 minutes a game. So he's their kind of their human victory cigar. So I mean, good for him. It's interesting to see them, kind of a team that's trying to compete, re-sign a guy who's 39. He's probably not going to play. You wonder if that could kind of bite them later